What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode on TUGGtv. All of you guys are safe and sound, considering that the pandemic got really bad in India. Alright, now if there's one thing we do a lot on this channel, it is stuff related to VST or virtual studio technology. And we all know that when it comes to VST software, there's plenty of plugins when it comes to like mixing, mastering, and guitar amp sims. But one thing that I've noticed that often gets left out is bass amp sims. Why? What do you got against us? Anyway, so I'd done a video sometime back which focused on 3 pre-bass amp sims that you can get your hands on, and in case you haven't watched that already, it's linked in the description or somewhere up here. Today is a continuation to that, and I'm going to be looking at not 1 or 2 but a bunch more bass amp sims that are free to download and you can get your hands on, sound pretty good, and we're going to look at how they work in terms of deep tone, twangy tone, or even distortion. So if you're one of the, oh, but true bass does not have to be distorted. No. Whatever floats your boat, you can go ahead and choose from this. Also, I'm going to be playing samples, both which are played by finger and as well as pick. So in case you're one of those, oh, but true bass is not played with a pick. No. Bass is bass, irrespective of whether you play with your fingers or a pick. And of course, to do this experiment, I'm going to be using my COT B5 Plus, which is a 5-string bass. And it's going to be tuned 1 step down, neutral EQ, and middle position on the bridge. So before we get into it, if this is the first time you're on our channel, hit that subscribe button along with the bell icon for more updates from us. Let's get into it. Bass check, Reaper check, and the very first amp that we're going to be looking at is the Ampeg SVTVR Classic. Now, this thing is by Plugin Alliance, but this was sort of limited time. I got it kind of after that. Amna Hunter put out a really good video as to how to get your hands on this, linked in the description again, so you can go ahead and check it out. If you are successful in getting your hands on this, firstly, what you can see is it's a very rudimentary looking amp. Pretty simple. One good thing is it also has, cabinets that you can go ahead and choose from. So you got the little rack over here, and you got a few cabinets that you can choose from. And apart from that, pretty straightforward. You've got volume, treble bass, high and low option that you can choose from. Bright, very rudimentary. But what I really like about this bass amp is that it's got a nice deep tone. So, just at default and, everything neutral, passive setting. So that really works well for me. And, even if I have to switch it to blues, you can definitely hear that it's also, on the deeper side. Now you do have this bright option, and depending on, what kind of works your music, you can select this, but in my opinion, I think it just works best in the normal modes. Okay, next up we have Amplitube 5. For those of you who don't know, and we've already reviewed this in the past, Amplitube 5 also has a free edition. They did in fact come out with a bunch of other amps that they were giving away free, in the last couple of months. But for the most part, they had a bunch of amps that they gave away free as part of Amplitube 5 CS. One of those amps, which I really appreciate, is a bass amp. So, it's a solid state bass preamp if you really look at it. And if you've seen our review of Amplitube, you know that one thing I really like about this is its UI. It's got a really nice and robust UI, so you can see the sort of bass amplifier over here, plenty of knobs that you can choose from. And if you're someone who likes to go into the depth of your sound and get a nice custom sound, you can go ahead and move the speakers that you want. You get a couple more options in terms of the cabinets that you would get as part of the free edition, or you could just completely bypass this and use IRs, whatever floats your boat. One thing that Amplitube is very well known for is this VIA technology, which will sort of help you move the mic placement for the kind of tone that you want. You can even get into details of the room. So, in case you want to have the kind of emulation of a garage or a small studio, you can go ahead and do that here. And of course, a little bit of fine tuning that you can do in terms of your speakers, the overall master tone. One thing I must highlight is I am using quite an old, really old PC. This thing is going to be almost 10 years old by the end of the year. So it is a little resource heavy. You might want to keep that in mind. But let's see what this thing sounds like. In terms of tones, it's not as deep as, the SVTVR, but sometimes you may not be looking for that. You might be looking for a little more ring, and that's where this would excel. So, And like I said, if you're someone who likes to play with a pick, no problems at all. Another thing I really like about this amp is that if you're someone who likes to go across the fretboard, it's got a certain nice ring to it. So, moving forward, we don't have one, but two free amps actually that you can get. This one is by KVR Audio, by EXE Consulting, and it is called the CL Bass. We have the CL Bass F1, and then we have 2. So yeah, pretty simple naming nomenclature over there. And in terms of what this has to offer is quite a lot. I mean, you can look at it. There's various knobs that you can turn over here. A lot of effects as well. So you got things like distortion, you got the phaser, you got the flanger, delay, compression, and all of that. So if you're looking for something that gives you a bunch of options, you actually might be very, very interested in this. In terms of what it sounds like, definitely a little more on the sort of broken up side of sound. It's not a complete clean bass. And also not the hottest. I mean, I haven't changed any of the volume settings, and you can already hear it's not as hot as the others. So you got sort of low gain channel, a medium gain, high, and extreme gain. Let's see if that makes a difference. Okay, in terms of absolute volume output, not as much, but you can hear that this definitely has a nice sort of metal bass. Definitely something that you can use if you're like sawing off. I think probably if you're playing like with a pick and you need some sort of gnarly distorted bass to cut through, the mix, definitely there to deliver. Let's look at CL Bass 2. Fundamentally it's the same. You've got multiple options over here. There's also different cabinets. I think probably changing the cabinet is what would change the tone. Let's see now. Yep. I think among the two, I definitely sort of like one a little more, because if you ask me, you could probably, change up a couple of settings over here. I don't know, maybe change a cabinet or two. Put this on the neck pickup. Turn up the bass if you can on your system, and you can play some nice, vintage bass lines. All right, next up, very, very well-known option and used by a lot of folks, but definitely had to include it over here. The TSC board. In my particular case, I've noticed, especially in the passive mode, that this really comes alive only when you boost that input and output a little bit. And one thing that is very unique to this VST is the blend option. So what the blend really does for you there is, one, of course, you have the VST tone itself off the TSC board, but in case you want to get a little bit of your tone wood in, you can go ahead and do that with blend. And in my opinion, absolutely stunning thing for like, metal. So if you're into metal and rock, so it's got that broken up tone that you'd be looking for, and at the same time it's got depth. So it's something that sounds really, really awesome, and you can go ahead and blend it and sort of. One thing I'd also like to add is, if you like to sort of play a lot up the neck, if you're doing a little bit of solo stuff and all of that, it's got the right amount of depth, but at the same time there is a certain clarity. Finally, of course, not to forget that this is just the TSC board on its own. If you couple this with a bunch of IRs, you are gonna get a really, really nice, mean and meaty tone out of this. And finally, did you think we wouldn't feature this one? It has to definitely be the Ignite Amps SHB1. Now, if you haven't used this in the past, this is my personal favorite. I've used it on a lot of stuff that I do. It is absolutely free, and I think it is an absolute killer, in terms of product offering. In my personal opinion, it's got the right amount of depth, the right amount of ring, and it's got a really, really gnarly undertone to it. So if you're using it for metal, it sort of does tend to cut through the mix, and at the same time retains a lot of depth. If you're looking for more depth, all you have to do is turn the deep on, and this thing gets really, really deep. So works on that front. You can also shape it up in case you want a little more definition to your tone. And after that, even if you want to play with a pick, works well, or even your fingers. I definitely like that click, and this is the kind of amp I would use even if I'm doing sort of slapping stuff. And not to mention, it kind of does work well on the fifth string, especially for metal, because it's got the depth, but at the same time, it's not kind of getting lost. In terms of, the plugin itself, pretty simple to go ahead and use. You can turn it around, control your input and output, the oversampling ratio. And apart from that, it's pretty straightforward. Has a bright option also in case you want to get yourself a nice bright tone. So you can go ahead and do that there. And I'd say I'd use the bright probably again if I'm playing some of the classic stuff in it. That's probably where I'd use the bright tone. But apart from that, I think, just give it a little bit of shape. You're good to go. I mean, I didn't even have to turn any knobs over here. Club this with a couple of IRs and you've got a really, really awesome bass amp. I mean, this is pretty much everything you need in my personal opinion. All right, folks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a particular sample. First finger picking and then the same sample with a pick. And I'm going to use all these amplifiers so that you can sort of hear what they sound like. Again, in the passive setting, as flat as possible. And I'm not going to be meddling a lot with the amps and the settings the way I did over here. So yeah, let's see what they actually sound like, and make sure you use a good pair of headphones or speakers to pick up on the differences. Alright folks, and with that, we come to the end of this little video. What did you think about it? Are there specific amp sims that stood out to you? Or are there some amp sims which I have missed and I should definitely check out? Let me know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you like what you see, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon as well so that you get all the updates from us. And until next time, stay safe, wash your hands, watch some of these other videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay metal!